Hi everyone, this is a recording of my live stream. We're going to be talking about teaching groups. I haven't gone live in a very long time, so I hope that I've got what it takes. Hi everyone, can you please let me know if the sound is okay and if you can see everything? Can you please send a little heart or a little smile or emoji face or something? Okay, cool. Hi everyone, good to see you. Okay, cool. So we are going to talk about teaching groups. Again, as I've said, I haven't gone live in a very long time and I hope it works okay. So as far as I can understand, everything is working okay. You can see me, you can hear me. Awesome, beautiful. Hope that everyone watching this is safe and out of harm's way. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. So what happened last week is I wanted to do a little bit of an experiment, to conduct an experiment, and I wanted to see if I could produce stories which are about like one topic which is related to the core aspect of teaching, which was teaching groups. I just decided to talk about that because of the book that I was reading. So what we did, let me quickly give you a recap of everything that we discussed so you can come back and watch that. So this is the book that started it, Activities for Cooperative Learning. By the way, if you are teaching groups, I suggest you check this out. It's awesome. I really love this. So this book kind of inspired me to give this experiment a try. I wanted to make sure that I produce like expert stories, and then I wanted to batch them. To be honest, I wanted to produce them and then share them throughout the week to see if it would help me save some time. It didn't, but it was a nice experiment. So we started talking about groups, and one thing that came up was home groups. This is when you put your students in one groups and they don't really move around much. You keep them for a month or so and then you change them. So according to this idea in this book, this home group helps students form better bonds. Then we also talked about stages of forming a group, and I used this book, which is Exploring Psychology in Language Learning. It's a great book. I highly suggest you check it out if you teach group, if you teach any other types of classes. And here we talked about stages of forming group. Here we go. Here they are. And I think it's very important for us to know how groups are formed, just because, well, I mean, if we know about what happens to our group, we can anticipate some of the problems, some of the developments, so it's all good. Then we talked about mixed ability groups, and this was the book that I referred to. I don't know if you could see it, but it's Mixed Ability Teaching, and we talked about different ways we can deal with mixed ability. Namely, we talked about differentiating tasks and grouping students in many different ways. So basically, that's pretty much everything that we've covered throughout last week. I think I want to thank you once again for taking part in this little experiment, because your replies really made a difference, and I felt that, you know, we were doing something together, which was awesome. So today I wanted to kind of wrap it all up and talk about teaching groups and answer some of your questions, which you kindly submitted, which was amazing. Okie doke. So the first question, I hope you can see it. The first question that I got was basically a group of questions. How can I start groups? How can I invite people to join groups? And what do I start with? So basically, you know, I am not an expert in forming groups. I can just tell you about my experience, and I hope it helps. So what happened with me is that I started a blog way back in 2018, I think, and I just served something of value. I just shared what I felt was meaningful, and I didn't really monetize my blog or anything of that sort. When I quit my school, I used my blog as a platform to find students. Because my blog was about teaching, most of my followers were teachers, so I just posted a story saying like, hi, I am opening some groups, please join me if you want. Just because I had this, how would I put that? People knew me, people could trust me, and people wanted to see what my classes are like. It was very easy for me to start my first group. But again, I was blogging for 3 years before I started my own group, so I wouldn't say it's like a quick fix. But this has to do with my tip number 4, like blog serve something of value to your potential customers, people who you want to invite to groups. I know that there are some chats, like networking communities on Vkontakte, on Telegram, on Facebook, where sometimes teachers share if there are any students or any clients. For example, if someone texts me asking if I teach young learners, I usually direct them somewhere else. So if you can collaborate with teachers, and I think it's very important to kind of change your mindset and think about teachers as your colleagues, not competitors, because you can, create a pool of students that you can exchange. So I think that collaborating with other teachers is a great way to find potential clients. There is one more thing. There was one more question which I forgot to put here. That was, how do I schedule group classes? Do I start with the time first? Because it's very difficult to find students who are ready to study at a certain time. Again, I am no expert. I'm talking about what works for me, and I invite you to see if it works for you as well. So what I did, I started with my own timetable, what works best for me, because this is the timetable that I'm going to be stuck with for a very long time. So I kind of established my boundaries, like no classes on the weekends. And I had a time slot first, and then I was looking for people to join that very time slot. So that was the way I did it. There is one more thing that I wanted to talk about. It's like, don't shy away and don't be, scared to talk about your groups and about your services. I know that a lot of teachers kind of find it difficult to talk about, okay, this is the service that I provide. This is the class that I teach. We kind of feel shy because it feels like we're shoving something down people's throats, which is not really the case. Let me give you an example, something that really changed my perception about online advertising and online presence in general. So in July, on the 17th of July, we had an online charity conference, which I was actively promoting for more than a month on my blog, not just this blog, but my blog on Vkontakte, my blog on Telegram. So basically what I did, I was sharing stories, I was sharing reels, I was sharing posts about this charity conference for a very, very long time. And you know what? People texted me after the conference was over asking like, oh no, I missed it. Can I join you or something like that? And at first I was like, well, I was talking about that for a month. Every day there was me mentioning the conference, and still some people missed it. So it kind of made me feel like, it may feel like a lot to me, but it may not necessarily be a lot to other people. So this is a little story of mine, how I thought that I was everyone was sick and tired of my ELT charity conference because I was posting about it every single day for a month. But turns out some people didn't see it. And again, if you think about promoting your services on social media, I know that we feel like, oh, I don't want to, promote, advertise or something like that. What helped me and kind of changed my perception a little bit was that I'm not like promoting or advertising. I'm showing people how I can help them. So I have a class for someone who can, if I think about my target audience, it's usually a teacher who works and wants to develop professionally. They want to boost their speaking skills. They want to promote their planning skills. They want to improve their methodology. And I have a solution just for that. So I imagine my dream client and I'm telling them about how I can help them. And this perspective, this mind shift really helped me to feel okay when talking about my services. I can help someone. So here's me telling about that. Again, I know it may seem like you are talking about that all of the time, but no. If people don't need it, they will just skip that stories, but you may reach out to someone who would benefit from your course and your solution. Again, think about the purpose, think about the value that you're going to be serving, and it makes promoting so much easier. If you have a blog, use the blog. If you have some friends or acquaintances, do that. If you can collaborate with colleagues, do that. If you can reach out to some communities, do that. So anything works. Just don't be shy and share whatever you feel like might work potentially. That's about starting off the group. I know, I am speaking from a position of privilege because when I started looking for groups, I already had a well-established blog. I think I had about 5,000 followers back then. But still, some of the things that worked for me might as well work for you, who knows? So that was one of the questions. I hope that answers that. Okie doke, let me move on to the next one. The next question was, okay, let's start with this one and then we will move on. There was a question what I find to be particularly challenging for group classes. For me, when we begin the class, like keeping the beginning of the lesson short is the biggest challenge. Keeping the warmers and the lead-ins short, because sometimes we can get carried away and just chat about life, and it's not a problem. But like if you have a plan to teach, sometimes yeah, you don't really cover everything that you were supposed to cover. It's not a big deal, but sometimes I wish I could, type stuff better. Sometimes a real challenge for me is like dealing with late students. If students come later during an online class, and then you kind of sit and you don't know whether you should jump right in and start doing an activity or whether you should chat. It's a tough one. So what we end up doing, we end up chatting until everyone joins, and then we do something. But sometimes, when there is a lesson that I planned and I know that students would benefit from that, and I really want us to kind of do that right away, and sometimes it's not possible. Some admin work is challenging, like keeping track of payments, reminding people about payments, sending feedback, assigning homework and stuff like that. It takes a lot of time. I did a little experiment last year where I counted how much time it takes me to assign and check homework, and it's a lot of time. So yeah, this is like, invisible working hours that you don't notice unless you make it your priority to explicitly count how much time it takes. So yeah, these are my challenges. Let's move on to the next question. One sec, let me change the picture. Okie doke. So there was a question. A colleague of ours, a teacher, is going to teach a first lesson in a teenage group, and they are scared about the first lesson. Any advice or ideas for it? First of all, I feel you. I'm going to be teaching some first lessons in a couple of weeks myself, and although most of the students are already familiar, I still get the jitters. It's really nerve-wracking, but we can use this energy and direct it towards, like productive lesson of some sorts. I would say this is the tip that was given to me a while back. Like, you need to make sure that memorizing names is your first priority during your first lesson. You can sketch up the seating plan. You can write it all down, use any tricks to remember what their names are, because if you manage to knowing names helps you to manage to establish rapport. Sorry, it's all got messed up. So yeah, get to know them, do a little bit of an ice-breaking activity so they feel more relaxed, because teenagers are usually very self-aware, and they really want to kind of be liked by people around them. So give them a chance to shine, to show off, maybe talk about themselves a little bit. Let them know you. Sorry, I made a mistake here. Let them know you, like let them ask you questions, maybe bring something that represents you as a person, as a teacher. And I think it is very important to kind of set the ground rules for your students, especially if they're young learners or teenage students. So you need to think about, like, okay, how am I going to manage this class? What rules are important for me? What are the routines which I'm going to be, kind of setting for them? How our class is going to operate all together. What's going to happen if they break the rules? Are there any punishments? What if everything is great? Are there any praises or something like that? I have a YouTube video which is like classroom management techniques. Most of that is relevant to young learners, but I think you can use some ideas to with your teenage students. So basically think about the rules, how your classroom is going to operate, and then ideally, because this is a lesson, you want to teach them something. But yeah, I think that setting the rules and kind of breaking the ice is a priority, but like ideally you want to see what is it that you need to teach them. Make sure that this teachable chunk is tidy, manageable, digestible, easy breezy. So yeah, ideally you want to teach them something just because this is a lesson. Yeah, that's the plan. Memorize their names, get to know them, let them know you, set the rules, make sure that you have the rules in place, and then teach them something. That's the one. Okie doke. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, let's start with this then. So I've got a group of 3 people. How can I manage group work in breakout rooms? The question, I think the first question that we the first question that we need to ask is why do we need breakout rooms? Sorry, one sec, I'm going to quickly read the comment. Can I see the live session again? I hope that I make it work okay and I save that, and hopefully it's going to be available to rewatch later, hopefully, fingers crossed. That's the plan. So yeah, coming back, if you've got 3 people, the question is, do you really need to set group work or pair work, or can you make do with... I hope that you can see and hear me okay. Can you let me know if I'm back? Hopefully everything is okay. All right, can you please like type something? Okay. Yeah, I can see people joining, but okay, cool. Yes, we are all back. Perfect. Anyways, as I was saying, you need to understand whether you need to set up a group activity or a pair work activity first before you decide how you can work, how you can make it work. Because sometimes interaction pattern doesn't necessarily mean that you send them in the groups, I mean like in breakout rooms, but you can have interaction pattern like one student. You can have an open pair when 2 students are working together. Either students are listening, or maybe you can have an open class, or maybe you work independently. So whatever works. So the question is, do you really need to manage the group work? If you feel like you need to do that, it's absolutely essential that you complete some activity in a pair. Then maybe you can work as a partner yourself. This is something that I would typically do. So I would just put 2 students together and I would act as a student myself. Sometimes it works. Of course, it's not ideal because you are not really following what the other 2 students are doing. But like, again, if it's absolutely necessary that you work in a group of 2, then it may be an option. Sometimes when you want your students to work, but you're afraid that they are going to be relying on you too much, you can just kind of distance yourself a little bit, just because this is the breakout room, so I assume that the person's working online. So what you can do, you can kind of move away from your screen to kind of show that I'm not here, or you can even take it one step further and maybe switch off your camera and monitor and say something like, okay, now you are going to work together, I'm going to just listen, and then you switch off your camera to make it look like you're not there, and maybe you warn your students in advance, and then you do that. One more thing that you can do is use breakout rooms for one-to-one feedback, which is, by the way, a great option that I personally don't use very often, but it's fantastic. So what I would do, let's say that I have a group of students and we're working on something, writing or reading or anything. I put students, each student is set up with, is assigned to an individual breakout room. So I can jump between the rooms and have like one-to-one tutoring session with every student. And again, everyone gets your undivided attention. You work with them. They can ask you any questions. You can give any corrections. So anything works. So basically, before you send them away, you say, okay, you're going to be working individually. I'm going to come join you and see if I can help. Why not? You can do that. Again, if you think about interaction patterns, it's not necessarily just like pairs. It could be open class, it could be open pairs when 2 students are listening to, 2 students are talking and everyone else is listening. You can use one student who's going to interview everyone else. You can have, I don't know, you can give a role, assign a role to your students, and then ask them, let's say that they are the teacher and now they are interviewing everyone. So there are many ways. It's not necessarily pair work. You can make do within your main room. Victoria is saying that she has done all 3, which is awesome. By the way, Victoria, if you stay and watch my live stream, there is a mention of you as well, because there was a question about like making breakout rooms work. By the way, go follow Victoria, your.english.journal. She shares some very insightful stories. So yeah, it's all good. Okay, awesome. So I hope that answers your question. Yes, odd numbers can be problematic, assuming that you absolutely need to do that. In a group of 2, you can work as a partner yourself. Not ideal, but like, okay, maybe. You can switch off your camera and kind of distance yourself, and you can just use breakout rooms for individual feedback, or you can play around within the main room. So that's the plan. Okie doke. Let me... Oh, sorry, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this. There was one question. So, key points of group dynamics. Do we really need breakout rooms if we have a group of 6? Is pair work so vital? What's all the fuss about breakout rooms and everything? And you know, to answer this question, I was thinking, okay, how do I unpack that? Because there is a lot. And I thought like my answer would be, it depends. Probably like you need to bear in mind, what's the aim of the activity? Do you really need your students to be working in groups? Do you really need to send them to pairs, or you can do it as an open class? And then the second question is like, what happens next? Okay, you send them to groups, and then what? So there is not a number of there is no amount of time that your students are supposed to spend talking together in pair work. Pair work is awesome because it kind of maximizes everyone else's speaking time because they're all talking at the same time. But it's not absolutely essential. It's not like you absolutely must send students to work in pairs every 3 minutes. No, it depends on your teaching aims, it depends on the goals, it depends on what happens next. Sometimes working as an open class saves so much time and you don't really need to send your students anywhere. So, which brings us to this one. If you think about breakout rooms and pair work, breakout rooms in particular, sometimes sending your students to breakout rooms can take so much time and you just lose precious time when you're sending people away. So unless it is communicative, unless it's like big meaty tasks that you absolutely need your students to work in pairs, maybe don't send them in breakout rooms altogether. There is another problem. By default in Zoom, when you send people away in the breakout rooms, they need to click to join the breakout room, and sometimes it gets clunky. Some people get kicked out of Zoom when they click something. Sometimes the internet is frozen, it's breaking up and stuff like that. So it sometimes is not ideal. By the way, there is a pro tip. What you can do in your Zoom settings, you can send students to assigned rooms automatically, so they don't need to click anything. Because I don't know about you, when I have this join the room thing, what happens is that sometimes students click that and they are being assigned to the room immediately. Others just chill and forget to click it, and then it kind of breaks the flow of communication. So what I do to make it more dynamic, I just send them away automatically. Again, you can Google how to send students to assigned breakout rooms automatically. It's going to be there. I mean, it's very easy. It's just like one click away. And the biggest problem of breakout rooms, it's very difficult to control. Unless you're using several devices, it's impossible to know what other people are doing. If you're teaching like in a brick and mortar classroom, it's way easier because you can see everyone at the same time. With breakout rooms, you can hear people who you are in the room with. So it's a little bit more problematic. I mean, you can use several devices. I would use my phone sometimes and my laptop, and I would use 2 different set of headphones, and I would have 2 audios being streamed to my different ears, and it's a little bit complicated. It's difficult to track. With face-to-face classes, it's easier. But yeah, it's difficult to control. It sometimes gets clunky. Sometimes people get lost along the way. It takes so much time. And I think that you absolutely need to bear in mind that, like, asking yourself, do I really need pair work? Or can we do it all together and it's going to be quicker and more efficient? Again, think about all of that. What's the aim? Why do you send people to work in pairs? And then if you think about all of the problems, one sec. Yeah, so there are a couple of alternatives that you can do instead of sending people in the breakout rooms. I think I shared a bit of my lesson, which I taught for English for Refugees. I had A1 students and we had a lot of student-centered interaction, although I wasn't really sending them to breakout rooms. So what I did, I would say, okay, student A, ask student B. Okay, student B, ask student A. So I would just nominate 2 students and we would work in open pairs. Or I can say, okay, student A and B, you work together and everyone else is listening. So basically, it's an open pair interaction, and I don't send them away in the breakout rooms. If that's a quick and easy role play or something like that, I would just do it this way. Picks and arrows. This is an idea that Victoria, your English journal, suggested. It's a great idea and I really loved it. So basically you take a picture of your students and then you draw arrows, like identifying who you want to work with. Again, you can assign them to work in breakout rooms, or they can work as an open pair. Yeah, why not? You can put names on stickers and then just indicate who you want to talk. If you don't want to say, okay, student A and student B work together, you can just click on 2 stickers and that's it. If you work online, use chat. This is so much fun. So you can basically ask your students to chat. Everyone has the voice. Everyone is talking at the same time, but they just type, which is a very important skill as well. So you can do that. Or you can ask someone, for example, if you think about checking a multiple choice exercise, do you really need to send people in the breakout rooms? Or maybe it's going to be too much of a hassle, so you send them, they check their answers like 1A, 2B, 3C, and then they come back and you waste like a minute waiting for people to come back. So maybe you can just do it as an open class, but in order to give everyone a voice, you can ask them to react. So what you can do is, let's say that you say, okay, let's check the answer. If you think the correct answer is A, put a heart. If you think the correct answer is B, put thumbs up or something like that. And you ask your students to react in Zoom. You can do the same with, I don't know, your fingers, your facial reactions or something like that. Like if you think it's number 1, pick one, put 1 finger up. If you think it's 2, put 2 fingers up and stuff like that. So again, check that using some sort of inclusive reactions instead of sending people away in the breakout rooms. So yeah, coming back to the question that was asked, is pair work vital? I think it depends. I, as a student, have attended a lot of classes where we didn't really have much pair work. It was open class discussion with a lot of students, like 12, 20 students. It was like a mastermind session and it was lovely. And it was very communicative. Everyone could say what they wanted. Everyone could share what they thought. Again, if we didn't feel like speaking up, we could just type our thoughts in the Zoom chat. So Zoom chat is a great tool because it enables everyone to speak at the same time. Everyone is empowered to use their voice and it's great. So, again, it depends on what activity you have. It depends on what your learning outcome is. It depends what happens next. Again, I would suggest using pair work for something very, very communicative, which has some information gap or opinion gap. Maybe something that requires students to speak, like your aim is to develop their speaking skills, then maybe yes, doing some pair work can be beneficial. If it's a big, meaty tasks that requires a lot of thinking, maybe putting students together for a peer check could be more beneficial because they can check some things, maybe help each other, and then checking it together. It might be also a valid option. Yeah, okay. Alina is asking, is there a way to pay for Zoom? Alina, you can text me after the live stream and I can send you a Telegram bot that I use myself to pay for Mira and stuff like that. Okie doke. So that covers 2 of these questions right here. Let's move on to the next one. Let me think. What is something that we haven't covered? Okay, cool. Let's talk about this one. This one was very, very... it's an important question and I wanted to kind of talk about that. So what do you do if you have an annoying student in your class? They talk a lot, they are boring, and the group hates them. This is a problem. Sometimes your students don't really gel together and it's quite problematic. So what you may do, you need to make sure that there is a good relationship. You need to make sure that there are some team building activities from the word go, so everyone is ready for a welcoming and supporting environment. So you need to make sure and make it your priority to establish good rapport with your students from the very beginning, like breaking the ice, getting to know you and stuff like that. Another thing that is important, for example, if there are students, I was thinking about like mixed ability in terms of one student kind of dragging the whole team down. For example, they're less advanced than everyone else and they kind of make mistakes and everyone gets annoyed. So you need to make sure that you kind of establish lighthearted attitude to mistakes. So everyone tolerates mistakes. It's not a big deal if we make mistakes. So students are not afraid of making mistakes altogether. So what I would suggest here is maybe using mistakes as a little game. For example, write the sentences with mistakes and you invite your students to correct them. So it's not a big deal. Or maybe, just like correcting them in a delayed feedback form, letting students finish what they wanted to say. So like show them that mistakes are not a big deal, so it's all good. I was thinking about setting rules, potentially, if there is some conflict, kind of in the making within this group. Maybe setting the rules, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, might be the thing. And I kind of feel bad about this student who is boring and they talk a lot, and annoying students and the groups hate them. I would probably feel like, supporting them and trying to protect them. And if I see someone being aggressive towards them, I would probably say something like, this is not the behavior that we tolerate, this is unacceptable, and it's not okay. If the student is annoying and like purposefully annoying other students, trying to pick on them or something like that, then I would say, this is not acceptable, this is not something that I would tolerate, and stuff like that. So you need to make sure that you have like boundaries and rules, and you stay consistent. So if you see that there is behavior which is disruptive, behavior that doesn't support productive learning, then probably I would do something about that altogether. One more thing, which is, it takes a lot of effort to make this work, but it's actually working. It's working wonders. So what you may do, for example, imagine that you have a student who talks a lot. So let's say that they're dominating in the conversation and they don't really need let anyone else talk, and they just won't shut up, and no one can get the word in edgeways, and it's really problematic. So what you can do, instead of just saying, oh, you never let anyone get the word in edgeways, what you can do is you say, okay, student, let's think of a name. Let's say that my student Tosik is very is very problematic and he wouldn't shut up. So I would say, okay, Tosik, what I want you to do right now, here's a timer. Please time everyone so we can keep track of how much time each person spends talking. So basically you make them responsible for keeping time, and you may say, okay, I want you to make sure that you time everyone and make sure that it's all balanced, so no students is dominating over the other. Can you do that for me? So basically you design a role which is completely opposite from what they would typically do in their day-to-day life. So you create conditions for them to reveal something that you want them to model later on. So basically you as a teacher create conditions for your students to show the personality trait that you want them to exhibit later on. Let me give you another example. Imagine that you have a young learner who is very argumentative. They want to fight with everyone, they can't lose or something like that. So you can make them responsible for keeping track of everyone being friendly and stuff like that. So you kind of make them like a sheriff of the group or something. Next time, let's say that next lesson, they do the same thing that you want them to rectify, you want them to correct. Instead of discouraging them and saying like, oh, you are doing that again, you may say something like, oh, remember what great of a job you did last time when I asked you to help to control that everyone is friendly, or remember when you did an amazing job when everyone was listening to their partner and everyone's speech was balanced. I want us to do that. So instead of saying like, oh, don't do that, you just refer to that example of them exhibiting the feature that you want to see more of. So basically, you just create conditions in which students have a chance to show new personality traits. So you give them the complete opposite, and then you praise that very thing if that was successful. With student who talks a lot, I would suggest making them responsible for keeping time. I would give them a task to make sure that they listen to a group of students and they keep it balanced. Why not? If you see that that's not working, I would probably use my authority and kind of exert power. I would probably use some gestures like, okay, thank you, and then invite someone else if I feel like it's too much. But again, it's hard to judge just based on that sentence because there are so many things that could potentially be happening at the same time. So I don't know. If the group is aggressive, I would probably try and make sure that I try to foster like friendlier relationship, because if people are uncomfortable, there is not much of learning that's going to happen. If they are being rude and disrespectful, I would probably stop that, saying like, this is not what I tolerate in this classroom, please stop. You need to have these rules in place as well. Again, that's a tricky question. There's a lot to unpack, but yeah, these are my tips. And then this one with setting new context. So you kind of give them a task which you want them to, you give them a task where they would have a chance to show a new personality trait that you want them to use later on. This is a great trick. It's counterintuitive a little bit, but it's working. So you kind of give people a chance to do something that you want them to do, instead of just like, telling them off for not doing something that you want them to do. I hope that makes sense. Okie doke, let's move on to the next question, which was, okay, let's do this one then. So a couple of questions were about mixed ability. So there was a question which was about, like, can you give a little bit of a summary about mixed ability? Like, what are the most important things to bear in mind? And one more question which was about how do we group students? Do we put weaker students and, more talkative students with shy students, or like what's the strategy? So let's unpack it one by one. So the first one, like mixed ability, it's a huge topic to unpack, and I just highlighted a couple of things which I find to be the most important, and you can kind of use that as a springboard to jump and explore that on your own as well. I think the most important thing for us teachers to bear in mind is that all groups are mixed ability. No matter whether you like it or not, it's impossible. No matter how great your placement tests are and diagnostic tests are, you will always have someone with a different ability. Everyone is mixed ability. So if you kind of think about that, it makes it easier, and you kind of know that you're not alone, and you just move on. The second important thing to bear in mind when working with groups, it is remedial work. Remedial work is something that we covered during our Expert Week stories, but a quick reminder, remedial work is when you use one text for different activities. For example, you use one text as a dictation, as a reading comprehension, as a close gap text, and then you use it for a summary, and then you use it for a modal paragraph, and then you summarize it, or something like that. So you work with the same input many times in many different modes. What happens is that just because you change the activities, your stronger students are still motivated, it's still interesting because, oh, look, we're doing something new, and your weaker students have a chance to pick up. So remedial work is very important, and basically recycling and revising some of the materials is a great strategy to use with your mixed ability groups. Number 3, it's you can differentiate instructions, which is you can invite students to do different tasks. You can have a set of tasks and invite students to choose the task that they feel most comfortable with. There was an article which I linked in my stories. You can go back and see it. It was an article by British Council, differentiating instruction. And they would give examples of how we can change the task. Let me quickly show you the slide so you know what I'm talking about. How you can change the task depending on the level of your students. So for example, this was the one they had for reading. Like, what can you do with the reading text if you have stronger students? And what do you do with the reading text if you have weaker students? So this is basically differentiating tasks and instructions. And again, here you can offer some choice. You can say, okay, now you pick what you want to do next. Something of that sort. So yeah, awesome. Why not do that? Differentiating task is amazing. Again, there is a link linked to my stories. Differentiating task is a very effective strategy. Then tip number 4, when it comes to mixed ability classes, don't fly with the fastest. I know it's very tempting to see your strongest student, your faster student, and then run with them. But no, this is not what you need to do. You need to make sure that you provide ample opportunities for everyone to pick up while sustaining stronger students' motivation. It's a tricky task, yes, but don't fall into this trap of flying with the fastest. It's really tricky. And task number 6, tip number 6 to be exact, is develop learner autonomy. Oh, sorry, no, number 5, I missed number 5, planning emergency activities. If you think about it, if you have like early finishers, you just give them another task. You just ask them to do something else. And what I liked about the task that I showed you in the British Council article, one sec, let me pull it up real quick. So if you think at things that they have for stronger students some ideas for reading tasks, for example. Write new vocabulary and definitions. So it doesn't really require you to do anything. So if you see that someone finished earlier, you just ask them, okay, now what I want you to do, can you please pick 3 new words and write the definitions on the board or on sticky notes on the mirror, so whatever works in your context. So basically what you do, you ask them to do something else. So they don't get bored, they are busy with something. That's the plan. And then you give your less advanced students time to pick up. So yeah, plan some emergency activities. That could be a great option. Why not? And oh, sorry, that's not the one that I wanted to show you. Give me a quick sec. So many things. Yeah, planning emergency activities. Once you have a couple of emergency activities up your sleeve, you can use them. But yeah, it may require some time. By the way, I've noticed that in some course books, for example, outcomes or evolve, there are some extension ideas, and they write early finisher idea, early finisher extension, so you can use that. By the way, this is a very important point to make, is that pretty much any course book that you can find right now, it is targeted at groups. So if you read the teacher's book, you will find a lot of group-related advice, like in terms of classroom management, in terms of early finishers, emergency activities, and stuff like that. So yeah, emergency activities sometimes is a must. They don't have to be super complicated. They can be low prep, and yeah, you just know what to do if someone finishes early. So what's the plan? And number 6 is develop learner autonomy. Again, if you, let's say, teach your students how to use dictionaries, you can ask them, okay, can you look up some words in the dictionary and teach us when we finish? Or when you tell them, okay, can you select some words that you would like to remember? Or can you please create 3 personalized sentences with these words? So basically you teach your students what they can do with the language once they are ready. Again, developing learner autonomy, it is very, very important. So they know what works for them. They know how to keep themselves busy. It's all a great thing. One sec, let me quickly get a sip. Awesome. So that's question number 1. Accept the groups are mixed ability. Remember about remedial work, when you work with the same text over and over, changing the tasks. Differentiate instructions. Don't fly with the fastest, although it is tempting. Plan some emergency activities, and make sure that your students know how to learn, what works best for them, and what they can do once they're ready. And yeah, again, side note, if you read any teacher's book for any course book that is now available, you will see a lot of tips on managing groups, like emergency activities, activities for early finishers, or mixed ability group suggestion, or stuff like that. So all the modern books are targeted at group classes, most of them. And the second question is like, okay, so how do we mix students together? How do we group students together? Do we put shyer students with more confident students, or what's the plan? So actually, there's no bulletproof solution here. I mean, there are many ways you can group students together. For example, you can put students of the same level in one group. Why not? So they would just complete the task, and yeah, why not? You can put students of different levels in one group, and then stronger students would help. Less advanced students, it could work as well. Sometimes people say that peer teaching is at times more effective than your regular teaching, because they can find the words to make sure that their groupmate understands them. So they can find ways to verbalize an idea that you were trying to get across but couldn't. There is a trick though. This is something that I discussed in direct messages. It was about writing, and one of my followers shared their story where they were put in a group of 3 to do some writing activity. One of the students was very strong. 2 other, including the follower who shared the story, were not very strong. So what happened within this writing group, where we have 1 very strong student and 2 students who are not very strong. So this student who was stronger kind of took over the whole task. They wrote everything down, and then they kind of tried to explain to these 2 what they did, but it was so rushed through. So what happened, according to the follower who shared the story, is that these 2 didn't really get much of this in terms of their learning. So all of the work was done by the student. So what you could do, I don't remember where I got this idea, but I remember it from somewhere. If you know where it's from, let me know. So basically the suggestion is, when you do writing, if you put your stronger and weaker students together, make sure that you assign a role of a secretary to a weaker student. So let's say that you have a stronger student who is responsible for generating ideas, and then the weaker student is the one who writes everything down. So if you do that, what happens is that your weaker students writes everything. So they kind of, process it because they're responsible for writing. And their stronger students is generating ideas and guiding everyone. And there's some peer teaching and peer learning happening. So what not to love? I don't remember where I got this idea from. I was trying to remember, but I don't. So basically, this is another way of doing that, another trick of doing it. So if you do writing, and you use mixed ability group, make sure that your weaker student gets a role of secretary. So they write everything, not just sit and watch the stronger student do everything. Again, if you know where it's from, please let me know, because I was trying to remember and I couldn't. There is a comment from Ala. I believe in random groups, by the way, which brings us to number 3. Sometimes you just do a random name picking, or you just put your students together or something like that. Okay, so whose birthday is in winter, you work together. Whose favorite drink is cola, you work together. So yeah, sometimes like random grouping works. There is no pressure. You never know what you're going to get. But again, I think we can employ all of these strategies together. And sometimes you can give your students choice. You can just say, okay, find 2 people you want to work with, work together. Again, all of them have their benefits and disadvantages. All of them, I agree with Alla, it's common sense. So you need to bear these in mind. All of these strategies work. They all can work in different contexts, so bear in mind when you think about it. Okie doke. Now, moving on to the next one. Let me move you over here. Okie doke. All right, let me see if what's the question that I haven't tackled. Okay, let's talk about this one. What ways of recycling vocabulary I use with my groups? I would say that I use pretty much the same revision or recycling activities that I use with my one-to-one students. So we can have some guessing games, some gap fills. Basically, I write some sentences with some gaps. Maybe we can create discussion questions which have target words within them. Maybe multiple choice questions, maybe tic-tac-toe. Basically, what tic-tac-toe means, you create a tic-tac-toe grid, and then you write the target word that you want to revise, and you put your students in teams, and you ask them to say what it means and use it in the context or something like that. You can ask your students to create their own personalized sentences. You can do collocation works. Anything that works for revision for one-to-one students works with groups. But I think the question is like, okay, so how do we make it work if we use these strategies? So what do we do with that? And yeah, you can do it in pairs. For example, putting students in the breakout rooms, and then I would ask them to open our notes from our previous lesson and ask each other questions about some of the phrases from there. For example, let's play a guessing game. I have a secret phrase. I'm going to explain it to you. Look at the notes and try to guess what is it. We can work in groups. It may work. Again, let's say that I put some pictures which represent some phrases from our previous lesson, and students need to work in groups to figure out what it means. Again, I can make it work. I can make it in pairs. I can make it as an open class. Open class is another thing. Or maybe teams. For example, if we are playing a guessing games, everyone can compete. So yes, there is an element of competition there. Ala is writing about grouping students, like giving them choice is not the thing that she goes for, because they choose the same people. Yeah, coming back to this one sec, let me open the slide here. I think it is very, very true. It's possible that they would pick the same group over and over again. I don't, when we think about home groups, something that we discussed in stories the other week, maybe it's not a bad thing. I would probably, myself, mix people as much as possible, but according to authors of activities for collaborative learning, putting people together in the same home group for like a month or so is not actually a bad thing, and it can bear some fruit in the long run. But again, you choose what works for you. Again, I just want to emphasize that there is no one size fit all solution. It all depends on your teaching context, on your students, on your beliefs, on your preferences. It's all there. Okie doke. Moving on to the next question. All right. that was the one. Okay, so this question is in Russian, but I quickly will paraphrase it into English. Like, how do you check homework? So not to spend a lot of time checking that. I think that one thing that you can do for sure is use some apps like life worksheets or learning apps or Wordwall or any other app or website where students get answers right away. So it's basically like a self-check thing. You create an activity and then they say, and then they see their answers right here. So yeah, why not do that? I see a question. I'm going to be back to that once I finish this one. Okay, so not to jump from to and from. All right, so you can create an automated task which is checked automatically. So your students submit the answers and they see the answers right away. If you are thinking about like some multiple choice, gap fills questions, that could be a potential solution. Alternatively, what you can do with your students, you can give them answers. So you give the task and the answers and you ask them to check the answers themselves. Why not? It could work. Or maybe you can do some peer checking. For example, you give one of the students answers and they are now a teacher and they can ask each other questions and then check the answers. Why not? You can check as a whole class. So basically you just ask everyone, okay, what do you think? What do you think? And stuff like that. Or maybe you don't check it at all unless they have questions. So basically you just ask them, do you have any questions? Yes, no, okay, let's move on. It especially works well if you teach adults. But like the first tip here would be, just use some app or website that checks them for you. You can do that on Google Forms, life worksheets, learning apps. Anything works. If you think about like assigning a task from students' workbook, life worksheets is probably the one to go because it automatically gives the answers and stuff like that. By the way, great idea from Victoria that you can schedule posts on Telegram or Google Classroom and then post the answer key a few days later. Perfect. Why not? It would work so great. So yeah. Anything works. There is one more thing that I sometimes do with my students. Let's say that we want to check sentence transformation for exam preparation, where you have the sentence and you need to change it, keeping the keyword. So what I do, I have two documents. Okay, one sec. We have two documents, document for student A and document for student B. Student A has question number 1. Student B has answer number 1. So student A answers the question and student B can see them. So yeah, why not? You can do that in this way. All right, there are questions about vocabulary revision. Okay, I can talk about that. Let's go back to this one then. If you have any questions, let me give you more details about that then. Okay, vocabulary revision. Again, I kind of glossed over that because there is nothing groundbreaking and I feel like okay, I can talk about them. I can see some questions like, we kind of skipped vocabulary revision. What about personalized sentences? Okay, here we go. If you have any questions about revision, please submit them now while I'm talking about that. So, guessing games. What might it mean? Guessing game is basically when you have a target word and you want your students to remember what the target word is. How you can make it work. For example, you keep your notes from your previous lesson where you have written the sentences with your target word inside. So usually what happens, I do that with emergent language. I have sentences with some cool phrases, and what I do for our next lesson, I just cover these phrases, or maybe I delete them, I create a gap. And I ask my students to guess what the phrase is. That's option number 1. Option number 2, I have a list of phrases and I pick any phrase that I like. For example, I like phrase number 2 and I am explaining it to you without naming it. So basically I give you the definition. It's also a guessing game. Another alternative of a guessing game, I find a picture which I associate with this phrase. I show you the picture and I want you to try and guess what the phrase is. So yeah, it's like working with associations. Why not? You can do that. Or maybe I give you the phrase, you can see the target language, but I don't have any context and I want you to guess what was the context that we used this phrase in. So there are many ways you can guess things. You can guess the target word, you can guess the context, you can guess who said it. So basically it's all about guessing, not guessing, but like retrieving some of the information and using it here. I put it all under this big umbrella of guessing games. Number 2, it's gap fills. Gap fills, these are some activities when I just put the sentences, I create gaps, and maybe I give my students a choice of phrases that they can use to kind of pick in the phrases. And of course, I'm going to be using the phrases which we learned during our previous lessons. Alternatively, what I can do, I can choose just 2 phrases and I can find many examples with these 2 phrases creating a gap. For example, I would use a website like Ludwig Guru or Longman Dictionary. I would put a lot of contextualized examples covering these phrases and asking my students to see what's missing. Or maybe I can create a gap keeping only some of the letters. So again, it's going to be a gap fill, easy breezy. Discussion questions. You take the target word and you make a discussion question with it. Let me give you an example. Let's say that my target word that I want to revise is... Oh, I forgot all of the words all at the same time. Okay, let's say that my target word is... I forgot all the words in English. Okay, a double-edged sword. Yeah, so something that is good and bad. This is my target phrase that I want to revise. My discussion question could be, do you agree that the internet is the double-edged sword? So basically students answer the question, which has the target language inside, and they just talk about something. Or maybe, when was the last time you said, oh yeah, it's a double-edged sword? Something like that. So basically you take the phrase and you put it inside the discussion question. Number 4, which is multiple choice, I have the word and some options. For example, what it means or what sentence works best. Multiple choice with the target lexis. Tic-tac-toe, let me show you. I have all sorts of things that I can show you. Why not use this opportunity here? So basically, what I do this. I draw a tic-tac-toe grid and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I cover them. So basically you just see the numbers. So what happens, I write the phrases, for example, double-edged sword. I write 9 phrases that I want us to revise. I put students in pairs. I cover these up so they don't see what's there. I ask them to open any number. They see the phrase. I ask them to give the meaning and use it in the context. So if they do that, you can put a cross or a note. So basically they compete in teams and they do this. And then the team that puts 3 crosses or 3 notes is the winner. Okay. Personalized sentences. There was a question about personalized sentences. This is when you take a phrase and you make a sentence which is true for you. For example, I personally believe that the internet is the double-edged sword because I spend a lot of time scrolling Instagram and doing this or that or that. So basically you create a sentence, your own sentence, which reflects something that is important for you. Collocation forks. It's when you have one word, a secret word right here. Okay, this is the word. And then you write some collocations, the words that go together. And your students need to look at the words here and then guess what the secret word is. Again, I can do that in pairs, I can do that in groups, I can do that as an open class, and I can do it in teams. I hope that answers your question about revision. Again, I didn't really want to talk about detail because I feel like everyone does that, but I hope that it was interesting. Maybe you revised a couple of things or learned a thing or two as well. Okie doke. Let me move on to the next one. There was one question, which was, let me think, what we haven't discussed so far. I think we haven't talked about this one. Yeah, that's a good question. It was about monitoring. So when I divide students in pairs and breakout rooms, how do I monitor their progress, especially if they're lower levels and they just keep quiet unless you are there to help them and encourage them? So what do? How I do it. Again, it's not like the only way to do that, but this is what I do. When I send students away in the breakout rooms, I switch off my camera and my microphone. If necessary, I can hop on and then ask if they need my help. If they need a word, I can just give that to them or something like that. And then I just jump between the breakout rooms. They can ask for help, so I will join their room. But basically, I just take turns and then visit every room and spend some time there taking some notes about language, taking some things down that we will later discuss. I sometimes send messages to let them know what's up. So for example, if I tell them, okay, 3 minutes left, I will just send the message to everyone so everyone can see it. So this is how I do it. However, this is a very valid concern when it comes to teaching lower levels. It is very important. You need to make sure that they understand what they need to do. Because when you send them away in the breakout rooms, they're all by themselves. So make sure that your instruction is very clear. Make sure that they know what you want them to do. Ask instruction checking questions. Ask instructions eliciting questions. Ask students to demonstrate an activity. So make sure that they're very, very clear about what they need to do. So they understand, they are familiar with the task. And another very important point, if you send students away for some freer practice, so you want to work on their own, it is very important so that they are familiar with the language. So don't send them away unless they have had enough practice, controlled practice or semi-controlled practice. So they need to be very confident with the language that you want them to use. They need to be okay with the language, and ideally they should be, feeling good about working on something on their own. So this is very, very important. I talked a lot about that during my live stream, which was about teaching speaking. If you are interested, you can watch that. But yeah, every speaking activity, if you send your students into breakout rooms to speak, there are a ton of stages that should go before that. So in order to make sure that they are able to use the language in the final stage, you kind of need to prompt them. You need to scaffold them. You need to help them. Maybe providing them with some cue cards or prompts so they know what they need to do. It is a very important one. And then there's one more aspect, one more facet to this question, which is how do you encourage them if students are just staying silent? I may use reactions in Zoom if I love something, what I'm hearing, I just use that without switching my camera on, or sometimes I can switch my camera on and do this or this, so they know everything is great. I may jump in if they need me, and I can say, oh ladies, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it was so interesting, it was great job here. And I can also send them a private message on Zoom if they're doing a great job. I can text them in Zoom during the class. The problem is that people usually get distracted when they get a private message from me, so I try to do that not while they're speaking, but let's say while they're listening or doing something else. In order not to distract them so much. And sometimes I do that after the lesson. So I just say, you did an amazing job. I can send a message privately and I can give some open feedback to everyone. I was listening to you and I've heard so many good phrases. I've heard that Alina used this one. I've heard that Katerina used this one. It was amazing. Lovely ladies. Good job and stuff like that. So you can encourage them using many different ways. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. And then let me think. Yeah, I think there was one more question. Let me see. Yeah, I think that's the last one. Okay, here we go. The question was, how do I make group work work on Mira? So for example, if you have Mira board and groups, how do you do some typical exercises like gap filling or something like that? I can see it doing one sentence one by one, like in a chain manner. So how I do it, technically speaking, if I want my students to do something in groups or pairs using Mira, I send the link to the board in the chat. I put them in the breakout rooms and I ask one of the students to share their screen in the breakout room so they can see their Zoom and their Mira at the same time. So that's the plan. If you think about a couple of things, like other aspects of this question, one sec. Yeah, it's this one sec. Let me open it one by one. Okay, cool. So alternatively, what you can do, you can ask, you can give a document. And if you put a document on Mira, each student can open their own individual page and they will see their page only. So basically I can give one document and I say, student A, you open page 1, student B, you open page 2. Or I can give two documents with two documents zoomed out, and student A can see their answers or their questions, and student B can see their questions, and then they can help each other and check. Alternative to like doing it one by one in a chain manner. Again, if you read any book on classroom management, like Classroom Management Techniques by Jim Scribner, or the Practice of English Language Teaching, there are tons of variations how you can do this open classwork, not group work, but like open classwork, instead of just nominating student one by one. So what you can do, you can choose one student who's going to be a teacher. You can give them answers, and you can say, okay, now you are a teacher, so you nominate everyone. So basically, instead of you saying, okay, now you, they do the job for you. So you kind of encourage them to talk, and you just listen and monitor. What I like doing is I just ask students to pick a number. So I go, okay, Christina, please, your number from 1 to 5. Christina chooses any number. Other students need to listen and pick any number apart from that number that has already been called out. So everyone is involved at the same time. Or maybe the student who answered the question, I tell them, okay, now you choose who's going to be the next one. Again, there is this element of variety added here. You can use some random name pickers, or maybe, you just don't check any numbers. You do your work individually, and then you say, are there any numbers you want to check? And you check those that they have questions about. That's pretty much it. Again, it's not really alternatives to chain. It's like variations of chain manner, but like there are ways you can do it. Of course, you can check some answers in pairs. You can check some answers in groups. If you don't want to do it as an open class, it's okay. Again, student to teacher, teacher to student. Again, so many ways to combine your students. It's endless. And these are the references, the course books that I mentioned today. And I suggest you check them out if you teach groups. They are quite helpful. There is a lot you can find. And then again, one more little trick here is that if you do teach groups, please make sure that you read the teacher's book of the course books that you are using, because all of the modern course books are targeted at group classes, and you will see a lot of very useful and practical recommendations regarding teaching groups in any course book, a teacher's book. Don't overlook the importance of the teacher's book. It is very, very, very important. Okay, that's it. Let me see if I missed any comments. You can ask your questions here if you have any. And we will be just wrapping things up. One sec. I will hang out for a couple of minutes. If you have any questions, submit them here. If not, I will just save that. You can rewatch most of it. Hi everyone for joining. We're just wrapping things up. If you have any questions about teaching groups, feel free to submit them in the comment section or in the question box below. Thank you. I haven't gone live in a very long time. You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you. There are a lot of thank yous in the chat. Thank you very much. I'm happy that you like it. I'm happy that I hope you learn a thing or two. Let me do it in my typical teacher's manner. What are your 3 takeaways from today's live stream? Is there something that you're going to use? Is there some idea that strike a chord with you? Is there something that you want to steal and try in your classroom? If you feel like dropping a comment, please do. Your takeaways, please share them with me. I would love to hear what's your takeaway after this live stream. You're welcome. So many thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, slides are awesome. I'm very happy with the slides as well. Thank you. Awesome. So think about your takeaways. We are wrapping things up to anyone joining us. We are just sharing our takeaways. I know it takes time to type on Instagram, so I'm just going to chill, wait for your replies. Thank you. And if you feel like submitting what you learned, what you're going to do, or maybe you are inspired to try something out, am I going to say save the video? Hopefully, yes, if I don't mess things up, because I haven't gone live in a very long time, so maybe Instagram changed something and I won't be able to do that, but my plan is to save it. Handling the talkative student. So basically summing this up, you can either ask them to time everyone, so everyone keeps it balanced. So you can give them a chance to reveal a new personality trait that you want to model. So that's awesome. Alternatives to chain activity, beautiful. Lots of gems about the annoying students. Okay, cool. Yeah, annoying student, like, yeah, you need to make sure that you set the rules. There are some things that you don't tolerate them, stay consistent. Try to establish rapport in your class, try to break the ice, try to show lighthearted attitude to mistakes if there are some students who are kind of dragging everyone down. So yeah, that's true. Secretary. Oh, that's a great one. So when you put your students together, that's a great takeaway. When you put your students together, one of them is weaker, the other one is stronger, and you want them to do some writing. Make sure that your weaker student is doing the writing part, the secretary part. Modeling behavior for a difficult student. This is such a beautiful and compact way of putting that. Modeling behavior. Yes, create conditions for modeling behavior. I was trying to come up with a way of putting that, but I couldn't do that. Okay, tic-tac-toe differently. Trying my way. Cool. Use information gap activity. The first student has to answer, the second student has the question. Okay, beautiful. Classroom management book. Definitely check this out. Yeah, great. That's lovely. Great takeaways. The idea that every group is mixed ability is so comforting. Yes, every group is mixed ability. This is what I stand by. I'm an adamant believer in this idea. It's definitely try differentiating tasks. Great. Read more methodology book. That's a great takeaway. Digestible teaching chunks for the first lesson, remedial work, tic-tac-toe with covered tasks. I have 7 pages of tips. Oh, wow, that's cool. Revising vocabulary with the help of work, some time of guessing games, breakout room ideas. Thank you very much. Concise, lovely presentation. Okay. Yes, do something. So, ask your students to do something you want them to be accustomed with. So yes, model the task first, demonstrate the task if possible. Awesome. Thank you very much for your comments. Just 1 more minute for you to write. If you are typing something, finish typing now. My teacher self is very happy because there are so many beautiful takeaways. That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Beautiful. So once I finish this live stream, I'm going to be saving that and going to go back to work. So yeah, that's the plan. And you know what? I'm going to work today, and then maybe I'm going to work a little bit tomorrow, and then I'm not going to do much work on tomorrow and on Friday because it's my birthday on Friday. So I'm going to celebrate that. Awesome. Thank you very much. I hope that you have submitted all of your comments. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for joining. I hope that I managed to save this live stream. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk to you very, very soon. Bye!